All right, everybody, little bonus content for you here on the Green with Envy podcast. Such a massive game this weekend at MSG. Celtics, Knicks, we had to get you set up properly. And to do that, we're taking a little trip to the principal's office here. We're bringing in our guy from Knicks Film School back to the podcast, the one and only Jonathan Macri. Macri, good to see you, man. Appreciate you for doing this.
Yeah, man. Happy to talk a little hoops ahead of what I hope will be a good game. Last time these teams played wasn't very entertaining for Knicks fans at least. But yeah, man. I think we'll maybe talk about some things that are different from when they played that first game and go from there.
Yeah, man, excited for this. Could be a potential playoff matchup that we're getting into here right now. The Celtics, the 2 seed, Knicks, the 3 seed. Just full disclosure, we're recording this on a Wednesday with, who knows what both of our lives are going to look like come Thursday, Friday with the trade deadline coming up. So we're getting ahead of it here. So if something changes dramatically, don't blame us. We're not Nostradamus here. We weren't able to predict the future. So we're going to give you the best analysis we can without knowing the future. But real quick, John, before we get to the full Knicks and Celtics of it all, I got to ask you about the biggest news from last week, just real quick. I just want to get your quick hot takes on the biggest move that probably in our lifetime. We're not too far away in age. We're about the same age here. We've seen all the moves that have been made. AD for Luka. Have you been able to wrap your head around it anymore several days later as to how and why this all happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been able to wrap my head around why it happened. It just seems like the Mavericks, maybe not uniformly as an organization, but Nico Harrison and the people that he has included in his circle of trust, just didn't. They were just out on Luca, and they didn't want to be in the Luca business anymore. They didn't want to tether their wagon to a horse that they felt like was going to run out of gas, and that maybe spent a little bit too much time at the trough or wherever the hell horses eat.
I appreciate you
But
committing to the bit on that.
listen, you got to do it. So I get that, and it's like, to me, everything I've read on it, it kind of reminds me of, like, in the past, if I've been in like a relationship, that it's like, once I know this, I don't know if everybody works this way, but like once I'm out, like once I've decided, like, yeah, this isn't it for me, like I would rather be anywhere and with anyone else than that person. And I think I think they had genuinely gotten sick of him.
Yeah.
And once they made the decision, like, all right, we're gonna move on, and we want to move on now because we want to try to win, but we still think we can win a title this year, however crazy that is. It's like, all right, well, who are you gonna call? Like, you had a player in mind, an archetype in mind that you wanted to go after, and they went after the player. So it has made a lot more sense since it happened. I still find it utterly fascinating that the goal of every organization is to get a guy with this skill set, and they had grown so tired of whatever aspects about him that they didn't care for, that they were just like, yeah, we just want out. That part is, I mean, I'm sure the book on that will be written over the course of the next several years, and with what he does from here,
Yeah, it's one of those things that as the days go on, it's just like it's still like, I can't believe that happened, but it has, and we'll see where it goes from here. Like you said, that book will be written. But let's go back and let's get on track here with some Celtics Knicks talk. As I mentioned, Celtics a 2 seed right now as of this recording. Knicks the 3 seed. Likely that will still be the case by the time you hear this here as the game tips off on Saturday. What I want to start with here, man, is how fun is this team for you guys right now? Because one thing that is so noticeable when it comes to Knicks fans is when they love their team, it's everywhere. You can feel it. You're watching a game. I live in Austin, Texas. I watch a game at Madison Square Garden. I feel it in my living room out here, almost like you do nowhere else. Like and I know some of my people are going to get on me because the TD Garden can get awesome. MSG comes through the TV in a way that I just think other stadiums do not. And so I think of the team that you all had last year that was certainly capped, at least in my opinion, as to what their ceiling was ultimately going to be. I know injuries never let us find out the final answer to what that might have been, but the whole city was behind that team. 90s Knicks, there's an entire lore built around what the city was like in the 90s with those Knicks teams. Obviously, this story isn't done yet, so time will
Yeah.
tell. But as you're in the midst of it right now, how is this team starting to stack up?
Um, I mean, in terms of how they're starting to stack up, I think it is the most talented Knick team of my lifetime, and I think they have the only other team that I think had more championship equity than this Knicks team. Again, I go back to like 92, 93 was probably the 93, 94 team, and that's in part because Michael Jordan was playing baseball that year. Um, I mean, they got this game 7 in the finals, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other team that has had the amount of championship equity that this team has now. How much championship equity do they have? I don't. Do they have an 8% chance to win the title, a 10% chance? Probably something around there because I still think you guys in OKC are in a class by yourselves. But the excitement around the team, it's funny you bring that up because last year, and I don't know that this translated to like around the country, but like there was, I mean, the January thing was like definitely a thing, and it had a lot of people thinking, oh, we could win it all. I was never quite there. But the team that after Randall went down and OG and Anunoby ended up going down for essentially almost the rest of the year, that's the team that caught people's attention in a way and emotions in a way where I had people writing to me and commenting to me like I've been a fan since the late 60s and I've never felt the way about a team that I feel about this team because they were like, and that team after January 27th, which is when those injuries happened, like they were not even that far above 500,
Right.
but they were going out there and they were leaving it all out there on the court night after night after night. Obviously, the first round against Philly was like it was magical in a lot of ways, and then they took it as far as they could, and then they literally like fell apart against Indiana. This team is I think, appreciated, and people are starting to love it in a way that is close to last year's team. But I would say that it's only gotten close in the last couple weeks because even like they had a 9-game winning streak in December that ended on January 3rd against Oklahoma City. And this it's the fourth 9-game winning streak. I think they third or fourth. I forget. There was an 8-game winning streak somewhere in there too. But like I think about the fourth 9-game winning streak they've had in the last 4 or 5 years. The excitement level around this one was so much lower than any of those. And part of it was because they were beating up on a lot of crappy teams. But just like
Yeah.
I really think it was a lot of people just being like, okay, wake me when they do something really impressive. And over the last like week to 2 weeks they blew out the Grizzlies. That the Grizzlies only lost in the last 10 games. They had a nice win pulling away from Denver in the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
They blew out the Kings when the Kings were playing well. And it actually all started with a game against Atlanta, which is a team that had given them fits. And that was kind of a scrappy game that they figured out to win. And now they're coming off a really nice win against Houston, come from behind win
Yeah.
against Houston, 46 points in the fourth quarter.
I watched that
And then
whole
a
fourth
game
quarter. That was a really nice win for the Knicks there.
uh, unbelievable. And there were about 5 times in that game where I'm like, they're done. They're dead. They're not winning this game. And they won the game in large part thanks to Jalen Brunson. And they're coming off this win against the Raptors that was closer than it should have been. So I think now finally people are like, okay, there's a real we're all in. We believe in this team. They've shown us what they're capable of. They've shown us some heart. They've shown us some grit. They've shown us, all those kind of buzzwords. And yet, for me, the existence of the Celtics is like I think the biggest story in the league over the last 2 months is whatever is happening, whatever was happening to you guys. I don't know if it's still happening. I'll leave that up to you. Is
Yeah.
that real? Because if that's real, then all of a sudden, then I get a lot more excited because I'm like, man, if we could actually take those guys down. If it's not real and they're just bored, then I still don't know if the Celtics play as well as they're capable of playing. The Knicks are gonna beat them in a series as currently constituted. Now
Right.
we could talk about like next year and the year after that if Drew, or Harford, or like maybe the Knicks get another piece, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So, but I think people are excited about a potential playoff matchup. I certainly am. I want to see where they stack up.
I'll tell you what, this Saturday is going to be a good test to your theory of was the Celtics struggles that we were seeing. And, it's funny, like the Celtics struggles was them still going 13-9 or whatever the record was over that stretch. Like not horrible, right? Like
with the net rating over like your worst stretch, the net rating was still like the third or fourth best net rating in the league.
Right. It was
wild.
Just the fourth quarters were absolutely killing us was in that time frame. But it's really interesting. This is such interesting timing because, like I said, we're recording this on Wednesday. The Celtics had a really nice win over the Cavaliers the other night. That was kind of a monumental step forward. And the night before that, or 2 nights before that, against Philadelphia, a completely undermanned Philadelphia team. And we've done a decent job on this show of trying not to fall into the trap of, oh my God, the sky is falling. We just won a fucking championship last year. Like we got to like rein it in a little bit, right? But it was becoming this pattern where narratives in the NBA just tend to play themselves out. Like, oh, you don't take this team seriously, you fall apart in fourth quarters, yada yada. Usually if it tends to follow you along far enough, it pokes its head out at the worst possible time when you get to the playoffs. And with this team, I was starting to get a little bit worried about some of these things. And oddly enough, and we'll see if this holds true, it's still just a working theory at this point, but something flipped in that Philadelphia game. And they talked about at halftime. Joe Mazzulla came out and said, "Are you guys tired? If you're tired, just don't play. I'll play the bench, guys." Like it's make a decision. Like just very blunt, matter of fact. And in the last 15 to 18 minutes of that game, and this is something that I think, and as a fan, I'll ask you, I feel like sometimes when you know a team so intimately, you kind of get this feeling like even aside from just, hey, X's and O's, this is what they're doing correctly. There's almost a feeling you get as a fan that you're like, this feels like that championship team. And it was a really weird time for that to happen in an Embiid-less, George-less, name the rest of the guys that were out, and something click in that 26-point comeback. And then looking at that Cavs game, it felt like that momentum's rolling over. Now we'll see where that ends up Saturday night. But to your point, I think as we look at a potential playoff matchup, which by the way, this would be an unbelievable series if we can get everybody healthy on both sides.
I hope so.
I think that's an unbelievable series. I think Saturday night is going to be a fantastic test for both the Knicks, where they're at, and for the Celtics, are they back to where they need to be?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Knicks, my hope in terms of when I think about, all right, how do you take down this Boston team? Like it kind of goes back to what you were saying about it's the fourth quarters, right? The Knicks lead offensive initiator is a point guard who has, I think, taken something of a step up this year in terms of his playmaking abilities. I mean, we knew last year and the last 2 years what Brunson could be as a scorer, but I think he's become better at like running the show and the decision making and all that sort of stuff. Still has a tendency to over dribble from time to time. Where I'm like, all right, if we have an advantage over Boston, it's that Boston, the ball's going to be in Jason Tatum's hands a lot and Jaylen Brown's hands a lot, and those guys are not point guards, and they may be prone to making more mistakes as we saw over the years. Now they obviously cut down on a lot of those mistakes in the playoffs last year, and I don't. Again, is that a thing of the past? Is it something that may come back? We don't know. We'll find out. In this next run through. But at the end of the day, like it comes down to how are the Knicks going to guard? How are they going to guard your attack? Because you're going to put 5 guys on the floor at all times, who could shoot the three, and you have to honor. Not like, their numbers are okay, and like, no, you have to guard everybody. If you don't guard them, it's death. And how do you balance that with a defense where you don't want, like, there are 2 guys that you don't want to switch onto. Like, I know already forecasting forward to the playoffs, like, if the choice is, all right, they're either going to switch Jalen Brunson onto Jason Tatum and live with that, or they're going to do literally anything else, Tom Thibodeau was going to choose choice B. Yeah. And choice B opens up, that's the house of horrors. That's what Boston wants. But if you don't choose choice B, if you choose choice A, well, Jason Tatum's like, all right, you got Jalen Brunson on me? I'll work with this. And that's where he's improved so much. And that's where he's so great at. And then you throw, the talents piece of it into the picture where he's obviously, has had his own issues defensively that were worse over the last few games than I mean, I don't know if you caught any of the Laker game on Saturday night. That was his, I don't know if I'd say easily his worst defensive game of the year, but it was up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the question, and I don't, and as long as this is a team built around Brunson and Towns, which I expect it will be for the foreseeable future. And I love that, to be very clear.
Yeah.
That's the question that they are going to have to answer. So, like, Saturday night, that's another opportunity for them to at least try to put forth an answer that doesn't include giving up. I don't even remember how many points they give up. It was actually, oh my God, they only gave up 132 points in the season opener. Well, you guys could have scored 160 if you
we
wanted
really
to.
slowed down in that fourth quarter when they
You
were
did.
going. They started chucking just for that 3-point
Oh, man.
record on that opening night. But yeah,
I've
that was
never
pretty
seen anything like
astonishing to
that.
watch. That was me and my co-host Greg. We have a good friend down here who's also a Knicks fan, so we were like, we got to get together. This is gonna be awesome. I felt so bad. I was like, man, I'm sorry. You got a babysitter for the night to come over here. This was not the time for this apparently. But you mentioned Karl-Anthony Towns. I want to talk about him for a minute
Sure.
here because I think some of the things that you laid out with like the problems of Brunson and Towns, we knew that going in. Like we knew that was going to be something you guys have to work around and figure out. Like it's part of it, but the upside has been there. You guys are second in offensive rating in the league. That's directly part of the view of bringing in Karl-Anthony Towns is the upside to the offense. Now the defense is 15th, but and I'm curious to know because going into this season, have not always been a big proponent of Karl-Anthony Towns, have just been like, he's talented. I get it. Not for me. That was kind of my general view on Karl-Anthony Towns. And I will say his last year with the Timberwolves, when he seemingly, I didn't think he'd ever be okay being the number 2 to Ant. He was he very much assimilated to that role. He took ownership of it and was a huge part of them beating the Nuggets, like his defense on Jokic and, just the way that he handled himself. And so I started to turn a little bit. I was a little nervous for what Knicks fans and Karl-Anthony Towns, even though I know it's kind of a homecoming, I was a little nervous for what that relationship might look like. But, like you said, you can point out some defensive flaws, but Cat's been awesome, man. I have loved watching Cat flourish for this Knicks team. 24.3 points per game, 13.6 rebounds, 53, 42, 84 shooting splits. He's starting in the All-Star game on 100% on. This is not a New York push. Like he deserves it.
He's been one of the
no
three
question
best
about it. What's been
front
the
court
Karl-Anthony
players.
Towns experience, and what was your thoughts on him going into the season as well?
I was excited. I Knicks fans fell on different parts of the spectrum on Julius Randle. I never. That's part of why I wasn't like all in on the January team because I just never believed that Julius Randle was going to be the second best player on a team that won a title. So when they made the trade, I was like, my bigger thing was like, oh my God, we're losing Dante. And that, to be clear, that was less about the basketball, and that's more because I had developed like I don't really develop emotional attachments to players anymore. I developed an emotional attachment to him, and I wanted the whole.
This is what I meant about the connection to that team, though, right? Like that's a part of it, right?
Man, and he was. I mean, him and Hardenstein, but Hardenstein, there was nothing we could do about. So, and that was the other part of it. Once they lost Hardenstein, it was like, all right, you have to do something here with the center position, and it's like, all right, well, you going to go put a Band-Aid on it and go like get Clint Capella, or are you going to really try to address this issue? And they went big, which I appreciated. I think I always thought some of the narratives surrounding Towns were overblown, and I thought that like he always got dinged a little bit, because he would say a silly thing in an interview or whatever. But his game, like you look at the numbers, you look at the impact metrics, like you can't deny any of that stuff. He has always
unquestionable.
Yeah, the talent's no doubt. He's always made teams better. He's made them like incredibly better on offense. And even if you look at some of the defensive numbers, and sure as shit, sorry, I don't mean to curse.
Feel free.
As of, and I think like there's noise in these numbers, but as of like a week ago, I haven't checked them recently. He was their best guy in terms of defensive on off, like the impact he was making. And this is a team with OG Anunoby on it.
Right.
Again, there's noise there, but he's been tough as nails. He's had opportunities where he's, could have come out of games where he's limping or he's this or that, and he just keeps on chugging along. Like, yeah, you get the stupid offensive foul, you get the, the drive where it's like maybe not the best time for the drive, and he ends up in the second row, and the team it's 5-on-4 the other way. Like, you get part of that, all that stuff, but like his intention is always there. I think it's always a positive. His energy, his effort is always there. That's never in question. And in terms of the basketball, I mean, the offense, I don't need to talk about the offense. It's night and
Yeah.
day when he's on the floor versus when he's on. I mean, I shouldn't say that. They've done okay to
I
score.
mean,
I
I
mean, they
think
still have.
he has a similar effect to what Kristaps Porzingis does for us,
Yeah,
right? The elite
yeah.
big man, shooting big man, spreads you out, gives Brunson
Well,
room, gives other guys opportunities. Like it's a world of difference for both of these teams having those type of
yes.
talents in their arsenal.
The addition the thing with, and I'm not saying Kristaps is a bad passer or anything, but Towns' ability to operate, just like with the ball over his head from the top of the arc is, I mean, I knew he had that part of his game. I didn't realize it
Yeah.
was this good. And they like this was like a team that just didn't cut. Like cutting was just not a part of their offense. And
Mhm.
now you got OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson, all these guys, cutting left and right to the basket, and he's hitting them. Like he had a game the other night where he had, I think, 4 or 5 assists in the first quarter. Like he could do that.
Yeah.
And but again, there's other holes in his game on. I'm not worried about the offense. Even like teams that switch a smaller guy onto him, I think he'll figure that stuff out. For me, it's just about like I understand what his flaws are on defense, and I'm cool with that. It's like we're all good with the defensive flaws, but it's just are you as engaged, and and again, this is not questioning his effort. Are you
Mhm.
as engaged? Are you as locked in defensively as you're capable of being? Because if he is at his 90th percentile or higher in terms of defensive engagement, all the stuff, high hands, active feet, like then he approaches an average NBA center. Um, and they haven't even done as much of like the hedging stuff that they did in Minnesota a lot.
Mhm.
But like when he's just in like a lazy drop and the hands
He's
are
got the
down
tools.
and
He's got all the tools that you
yeah,
would theoretically draw up in a make. If you were just
well,
making up a player, he's got a lot of the
he
tools that you would put into a defensive center.
the thing is he doesn't move his feet well. He's never going to move
Yeah.
his feet well. That's for as gifted as he is on offense. He's never going to move his feet well on defense. And there is a presence that great defensive centers, around the rim have that he just lacks. I think some of the rim numbers in terms of shots against him are overblown, but he just doesn't have that ability. So, but as long as he is like the best version of himself, and are we going to see that for you know 30 minutes a game over a 7 game series in every game, not 2 games, not 3 games, but like all 7 games potentially of a 7 game series? I think that's what's going to ultimately decide his, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but his legacy here, because
Right.
if he could be the best version of himself on defense, I think this team is probably going to win. I think they will win a championship at some point during this era of the team.
Right.
He was my X factor before the year. He's still my X factor now, because the rest of these guys, I know what they're all going to give me. Like OG Anunoby, I know there's an injury thing, but like I know what I'm getting
Mhm.
from the rest of these guys. It's Towns and his ceiling, specifically defensively, that I want to see where that's at.
I think you're spot on when it comes to, not just for this year. And I think this year you guys are a little bit limited given the trade and the ability to add depth. Like,
They
that's
are.
just, it is what it is. Right. And so I mean, hey, listen, Celtics were a really good team last year, but we did get some luck along the way. So that means you guys still are in
Oh,
that next level category, I think, where, hey, if certain things break your right way at the right time, it leaves the door open. But I think long term, you're right. Both short term and long term, you're right. Cat's defensive ability and seal it will be kind of what raises or
yeah,
keeps the ceiling at a certain place. And so that brings to, at least just for this season, the other question of, it's, if you go on NBA.com and you filter any type of 5-man, 4-man lineup, it is just 7, 8 different Knicks lineups that are in there. And
yeah,
listen, part of that is like, I know that you guys, aside from there's an OG injury right now that you guys are working through, I can't believe how healthy this team has been from that
yeah,
that top five. 45 games or 46 games, excuse me, from Cat, 49 games from OG as of this recording, 50 for Hart, 50 for Brunson. We know Mikal Bridges never misses a game. That's his part of his thing, is that he's just the iron, he's the Cal Ripken of the NBA, right? Dude never misses a game. And
yes,
so, like I said, this is tough to answer because listen, for all the people that I'm sure you get plenty of people that are like, we've got to cut down their minutes. Tibbs needs to play this person and that person. Like the bench really isn't that great. So I don't really know who people want Tibbs to play, but
They want
ultimately,
Tyler
are
Kolek.
you worried about that? The minutes that we've talked about for years and years. I know it's probably a
Yeah.
tired ass conversation, but where are you at with that these days when it comes to Tibbs and minutes?
I don't worry about it. It's not something that ever keeps me up at night. I deal with it after pretty much literally every game and
Yeah, I
in
can't
between
imagine.
games. No, I mean, look, it's part of the job, right? Here's why it's not a huge deal to me. Karl Anthony Towns is averaging 34.7 minutes a night. Jalen Brunson's averaging 35.3 minutes a night. Both of those totals are perfectly acceptable.
Right.
In Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges, you have two of the, I don't know, 5 players in the entire league that they could go out there and they could play 48 minutes a night, and it's not going to impact them one bit.
Yeah.
They're not going to, Josh Hart, his thing this year is he's been kind of easing into games, and like it's until the middle of the first quarter where he actually starts like playing real defense. But like his energy goes up as the game goes along. Like perfect example, 2 nights ago, or what was it, last night against Toronto, he had a Frank Ntilikina stat line in the first half, finishes with I think 15, 7, and 6 or something.
Yeah.
He was awesome, and he played whatever he played, 41 minutes. Mikal Bridges too. Like there's been some stuff about his pick and roll defense. Like he's getting stronger as the season goes on. Minutes don't affect those guys. And then the last one is OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby is averaging 36.3 minutes a night. Yeah, 36.3. Like in a perfect world, would it be 34.5 or 35 point? Like,
you're
sure.
nitpicking at this point. Yeah.
Am I losing my mind over a minute or a minute and a half? Like I personally, I'm not. I think where people get hung up on this stuff is where they have a 20-point lead. And this has happened a few times. I have a 20-point lead with 5 minutes to go. And Tibbs, like there was a game. There was a game within the last couple of weeks where they were up literally by 20 points, I think, or 22 or something. And Towns checked into the game with like 4 minutes and change to go. Now he checked out like a minute and a half later, and he had sat for a long time. Like he ended up playing in the game like 33, 34 minutes. But that's the stuff that just drives people insane.
Sure.
And which I get. It's whatever. I get it. But like, no, to me, it's not a big deal. And you know what evidence I have? This team has played, because everybody's always like, oh, they're going to break down before the playoffs and they're going to wear it down. This team has played with more energy over the last few weeks than they have the entire season, number one. And they, like you said, they've been healthy. And the OG injury that happened, that's not an overuse injury. He stepped wrong and he got a foot sprain. Shit happens, So again, that's me. I'm in the minority. If you ask 9 Knicks fans out of 10, they'll go crazy about this stuff.
Yeah, I think there's been other times in the Tibbs era where I'm like, come on, man, Alex Burks was your guy. You can't give him a few minutes to kind of bring the minutes down. But when you look at this roster, this was part of the trade is, hey, year one, we're going to get by with what we have. And then, we'll see year 2, year 3, how we fill out that depth. But let me get you out of here. One last question here, man. Give me, going into this Celtics Knicks game, what's the biggest advantage the Knicks have, and what's their biggest disadvantage versus Celtics that they have?
That's a good question. Biggest disadvantage is they don't have OG Anunoby right now, and
I know it's day to day. I think from what I've seen, but it looks like I would assume he's probably not playing like that today.
He's not playing. So the biggest disadvantage is they're going to start Precious Achiuwa. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know if McBride's going to wind up playing 30 minutes. It's interesting because the Celtics are a team that like, you don't necessarily need the extra size to make sure you're okay on the boards.
Mm-hmm.
That said, he's still going to start Precious. He's going to start Precious, which again I get, but like you're like that one change makes such a difference against the Celtic defense that I know the numbers aren't where they were like last year, but like you guys could still like they're so smart. And they're going to not pay one iota of attention to Precious Achiuwa. So that's the biggest thing. Unless the Knicks just go crazy on the glass, which, that's always a possibility. And they have at times. Like they were really good. They were 18-0, I think, second chance points in the first half against Toronto last night. So they could do that. Biggest advantage, I don't like that they like it specifically against the Celtics. I don't know that there's one thing that I would say. I think Jalen Brunson has gotten to a place where I don't know that there's anyone on the Celtics like that I would say is a Brunson stopper at this point. I don't know that anybody in the league is a Brunson stopper, but we've seen certain, like Dyson Daniels was like, gave him real fits the first couple games they played. Who the hell did they play recently? Anytime he plays a team with like a ton of length and like with a really good on ball guy, you can it has flustered Jalen. And I guess, he's the head of the snake. If he gets going, it kind of sets everything else up, like most teams, obviously. But I don't know, man. With no OG, I don't want to say I'd be shocked if they beat the Celtics on Saturday. I'd be pretty damn surprised if they won that game.
He's one of the more important guys in this type of matchup. I mean, when you think about when you put together Wingstop, and I mean, you're looking directly at the Jays as kind of, that's a big part of what you're putting them together for. And so when you don't have one half of them, that's tough.
And the last thing I'll say is, like, again, their defense is ranked 15th. That ranking I don't think has changed much in the last couple of weeks. But that's what I was going to look up. For the first time, really all season, actually no, not all season. For the first time in the Thibodeau era recently, they've been generating turnovers at a rate that they just have not generated under Thibodeau, because he's all about control what you can control, stay home, do not gamble. If you gamble, you're coming out of the game. And like I'm looking up, like the last 10 games, they're give me 2 seconds. Their turnover percentage it's been a lot better, and they've been like more aggressive, and that, OG Anunoby is like a massive part of that. Yeah, over the last 10 games, they are second in opponents' turnover percentage, behind only Oklahoma City, which is, again, if you follow the Knicks
they're
at
like
all,
historic where they're at in that category.
Yeah, well, no, the Thunder are historic, but like if you follow the Knicks, like they've been really bad in opponent turnover percentage. It's been the one segment of their defense since Tibbs took over that's been really bad. So, and getting back to OG Anunoby, he may not be getting these steals directly, although he did have a 6-steal game recently. But just like, okay, so defenses want to stay away from him. It's like Deion Sanders. You don't want to go over on that side of the field. But just his presence as an off-ball guy, it makes all the difference in the world. And then, what's the best way to stop the Celtics from beating you? Have them not shoot. Right. Turn them over. But then again, they're so careful with the ball, and like they're so smart. You guys are a great team, man. That's really all there is to it. No, if you guys don't win the championship this year, I think my prediction is that it will be less somebody beat you, and it will be more that like the Celtics maybe not beat themselves, but like they do not play up to their capabilities.
Right. Injuries, or just there's something off. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I think ultimately I'm still in Celtics, OKC kind of in their own category. And then I think there's like 8 teams that maybe between the West and the top of the East that kind of comprise that. Maybe 8's a bit strong, but there's
a lot. I'm more
teams.
like 3 or 4.
I think you're right. I overestimated that, but the Knicks are definitely in that second tier, man. So I'm excited. Saturday night, MSG, Celtics, Knicks, really hard to beat that. I believe you guys are hosting a watch party for it.
We are,
correct?
And T Squared Social.
Give the info here, just in case we got some Celtics fans in New York that want to come crash. They want to come get that smoke. Let them know where they can go do it.
We had some Lakers fans at the watch party on this past Saturday. They had a grand old time. It's at the place is called T Squared Social. It's on 42nd Street, just down the block from Grand Central Station, so centrally located. Good food, good booze. Come get a table. Games on like the biggest screen in the world, and along with 27 other TVs. And we'll have other NBA games on. It's a great spot to watch a game. So yeah, we'll see how things work out. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
If you're in New York, I'll retweet where it's going down here and where you guys can get tickets. Make sure you're following us here at Green M.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you joining us here, man. Looking forward to this game, and hopefully we'll be linking up for a playoff preview down the line here in the spring. So appreciate you joining us, man.
I would not mind that at all. Thanks for having me on, man.
All right, bro.